Welcome, everyone. This is the June edition, the 6th edition of Textiles of Japan for the second group. Today, we're going to be talking about Kyokechi, which is a type of clamp resist. It started or it became popular in Japan in the Nara period, which is roughly the 700s in Japan. And it's a type of compound, not compound clamping. Basically, one clamp is used, but many, many colors are employed. So this is a style from the Nara period in one of the museums. This particular piece, however, is a contemporary piece from China. There's a revival in China of traditional clothing called kanfu, and they'll reproduce pieces to fit the tastes of the ancient times. And those last few images I showed you are some examples. Now, what we're seeing here is Todaiji in Nara, and it is part of this old capital. Okay, it has preserved much of the ancient culture that came over from China, and the Japanese adapted to suit their own needs. So this is one of the classical dancings from that period. Again, it has much more of a Chinese feel than what we would associate with Japanese, but featured in these are these Kyokechi textiles. Now, what I'm showing you is not going to be really clear resolution. It's from a videotape downloaded 15 years ago, which I'll give you a link to, but nothing has replaced it in the meantime. This shows you some of the color, some of the levels of definition. These are some of the dyes that are used, whether it's indigo or in this case, safflower, benibana. Okay, benibana actually doesn't give us this orange. Benibana gives us a pink, and then there's a yellow that goes over it to make orange. We're looking at the shosoin now, which is the traditional storage house in Nara that houses all of the imperial treasures and that type of collected things, primarily from that era. And the videotape we're watching at the moment is of Yoshioka, a very famous natural dyer in Japan. And he said about reproducing this Kyokechi style. And so you can see there are two boards that are carved, mirror image. The holes you're seeing allow the dye to pass from the other side into this clamped wood. So here he's layered two pieces of cloth, clamped between these two boards, cinched down with the rope, and then you can see all those little holes that he's going to block with pegs. Now, the open holes, like the yellow ones, will allow yellow dye to go in. And if he unplugs the little peg, it allows the next color to go in. So we see the indigo blues here. Okay, this is a reduction vat that he's using. Go ahead and dip that entire clamped set of cloth down inside, and you can see the beautiful blues that are achieved. Okay, now that means the blue hole pegs were open. Now, if he leaves the blue hole open and then also opens the yellow, we get yellow and green. Yellow where there was no blue, green where it's going over the blue that was exposed earlier. Next, he'll go ahead and dip it into the benibana, and where there's only benibana hole, you get pink. When the benibana goes on top of the yellow, you get a vermilion color. So you wind up playing these pegs a little bit like an orchestra of, rather than hitting a note, you're opening and closing the holes to have this orchestra of color instead of sound. And so here, let me, well, you can see it washed off. The white part is where the wood was pinching against the other side with the cloth in the middle, preventing any color from seeping in. And the colored areas are the open cutout areas where we poured the dye earlier. This is Yoshioka's reproduction piece, and these were used in recreating these Nara period processions. Now, this particular piece is actually the ancient one. Let me back up just a little bit so you can see it. Going by a little bit quickly there. So this is actually the ancient one from the shosoin that he was reproducing, okay? Now I'm going to take you into some that I've done because I can show you the process a bit better with samples I've prepared. So these are two large blocks of redwood. I chose redwood because redwood expands equally in all directions, so I won't get distortion or warping. And I've used a router to cut out these areas. And of course, here you can see the holes, a little bit larger than his, but the holes that will allow the dyes to flow in because you can see this donut shape, this circle, when it's pinched against the circle on the other side, if there's no hole, no dye will flow in, right? It serves as a barrier to the color. So wherever this wood is raised and pinching on the other side, it will remain white. A little bit might wick in, but it'll remain white. So in order to have the dye penetrate to this inner recess, it's necessary to have the hole. And then, of course, I can cork those as desired. So here you can see the thickness of this one plank. I'm putting down some Japanese rami here, some mosquito netting actually, and then I'm going to match the other clamp to that, the facing side. Now where they used boards and rope, I'm just going to use C-clamps to tighten mine down. I have some yellow onion skin prepared. Okay, I've added my mordant and everything already. And unfortunately, my pot isn't quite as deep as my clamped piece. And so I'm having to turn it over halfway through, which is okay. The edges were a little bit lighter, the middle a little bit darker, which is just fine. The middle darker because it was steeping twice as long. Now, while it's still piping hot, I've pulled it out of the onion vat and I'm squirting in different dyes like cochineal. And so they're going to react to the heat of the board. Once that's done, I can push in corks, pull out corks, dip it into my indigo vat, dip it several times. Again, you can see on the left, the corks have been removed. So that part will dye blue as the color flows in. The corks that are still in place will prevent any blue from seeping into that section. Okay, so let's go ahead and unclamp this now. Remember, we've done the onion skin. I've squirted in some other dyes such as cochineal, and now we have blue in some areas. Okay, and as we pull it out, you see what we get. We get a range of colors of blues, reds, oranges, and so forth. Okay, and the design, I'm happy to say, is pretty sharp, pretty clear. And you can put as many layers as you like. Traditionally for Kyokechi, you do 2 layers, but you can actually get many more depending on the weave. Traditionally, gauzy, thin weaves are used because that allows the dye to penetrate through more than one layer easily. And you get better color that way. So here are a couple more examples of Kyokechi I've done. Okay, I'll give you another quick example here. This is using a router. And this time, rather than having just 2 blocks, I've gone in and actually done 2, 4, 5. I've did 5 of them, matching each other so that I could then do a much larger repeating pattern as the cloth accordion pleated back and forth through the different layers. And in this case, I decided because the C-clamps take up so much space, I would try using some threaded bolts instead and screwing them down this way. They don't take up quite as much. I don't need as large a pot in that case. Now, here I'm working cold. I'm pouring the onion skin with my mordant in it. I'm steeping it thoroughly. Once I'm through letting the yellow drain a little bit, I'm going in and putting in additional extracts. But I still need to heat set it. So once I have my pot going, I'm going to put the whole thing in, steam the water for a little while once I put the lid on, and usually I steam for about 45 minutes or so. Okay, having let it cool down to room temperature, then I go ahead and see what I get. So as I pull these off, you can see the range of colors I got simply by pouring extracts in. But that extract, remember, has to flow through to all the other layers. And this is what you wind up with. Now, traditional Japanese ones, these are from the later Edo period and so forth. This is what you'd see. This is similar to the one in your sample kit, okay? It's done with benibana. When people say kyokechi, we most often think of benibana, safflower from this period. Remember, the safflower is actually pink. It's the yellow kariyasu straw dye that's applied over the top that turns it this vermilion. So the pink you're seeing around the edges here is the benibana, the red safflower. And then the areas that have yellow added to the color give us this vibrant vermilion. A lot of people refer to the vermilion color as benibana, which is correct, but it's misleading because you think it's all safflower, and it's not. It's kariyasu straw plus the safflower. And this is the sample from your boxed set. This is another example now. Look how very detailed this one is with this center section, okay? So it doesn't have to be just one color. As a matter of fact, it's far more interesting if you build up layers of color. Now, this is very contemporary. This is by a modern artist. Okay, it's this century. Very beautiful, delicate, more contemporary feeling Japanesey looks to them. On silk, I don't know if you can see this on your website, but these are jacquard weaves, not jacquard, excuse me, lino weaves. They're gauzes. And as a gauze, it allows the color to pass through the different areas. So kind of hard to see on the screen, I think. Here, this gives you a little bit better shot. Can you see how open that weave is in this case? Let me stop. Okay, maybe you can see that. Depends on the size of your monitor, of course. But this is a very open net-like gauze, which allows the artist to basically clamp or print, so to speak, several at the same time. Okay, so basically that covers it for Kyokechi today. As I said, it's a little bit short one, but we'll go ahead and sign off now and go to the group and ask questions so you can all come back on again, okay?